Welcome to the Kerrville Bible Church Pastors Podcast, where we seek to encourage and equip you in your walk with Christ by exploring a variety of biblical and theological topics. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to learn how you can submit a question for us to answer on the podcast. Welcome back to the Kerrville Bible Church Pastors Podcast. My name is Toby Baxley, and I am your host, and I'm joined, as always, by my faithful co-hosts. You guys want to tell your names?
That's Murray Van Gundy.
Mario.
Mario.
J.
It's my mission.
J.
It's my mission trip. Latin American name. They can't say Murray, so they say Mario.
Mario.
Or Mauricio.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Reverend J.C. McKnight here.
Reverend J.C. You like to be called
Rev.
Reverend?
Well, I like the J.C. part.
You like the J.C. part?
Like J.C. Ryle.
Yeah.
I'm just Scott.
It's just Scott.
I'm just Scott.
How like J.C. Ryle are you, do you think?
It's not,
Reverend J.C. Ryle.
it's not just the J. It's, there's R.C. Sproul, R.C., J.C.
Yeah.
There's this A.W. I'll just say A.W. You guys know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Sure you do. So, it's just something about that weightiness. And you just go by initials,
Wonder what did his friends call him?
G.C.
Dub.
Burkauer.
He didn't.
Yeah.
Who? Who are we talking about?
A.W. Pink. He probably didn't have friends.
No.
Kind of like us. We don't have friends.
He was way too prophetic and grumpy to have any friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Murray's not.
Ryle probably didn't have any friends.
Murray's not going to get grumpy. He's committed to not becoming grumpy.
So grumpy. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Murray's
I already
feeling
am
good
grumpy.
right
You know
now
what,
because he's
I'm not on
he had
Novocaine.
a tooth pulled this morning, right?
No, there's no Novocaine in my mouth.
You know what'll ungrumpy you?
Looks
may
like.
the Lord bless you in time with
What?
this grandchildren.
Yeah.
Grandchildren will
That's what Katie
they
thinks,
will
but I don't know.
ungrumpy you. Yes, we get to spend a week with ours next week because our son Caleb's going to Nigeria for 2 weeks, and so we're going to take Hattie off of Mary's hands for about 5 days. And so, wow, what a benefit of your son being obedient to the Lord to go on a mission trip. We get to keep his
To Nigeria.
Are you going there, or are you bringing her here?
Well, we'll go get her.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go make 2 trips. So Kim will go get her, and then the plan is for me to take her back. Kim will go back with me if she's available, and I think we'll get back. I'll take her back the day Caleb gets home. So,
Do you get nervous driving
That'll be
with her in the car?
Oh no,
No?
she's a.
Chris is a
mean the way
great
you
driver,
drive.
and he has
great driver,
and he has a
and
great car.
And she's a great car, and she's a great granddaughter. So she's
There's
so much fun.
it's a win-win situation.
Oh, great.
all around.
So, Murray, you had a tooth pull today.
I did.
Yeah, this
tooth.
morning.
My front tooth. You guys won't. Nobody will notice.
Nobody will notice.
My front
You got it packed with cotton.
My front tooth. Nobody will notice. So if you've noticed, please don't come and say something to me. Like, hey, did you get your tooth pulled?
Dude, you could have said a softball knocked it out of your mouth and had a great war story.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I got hit by a bat.
Too bad it's actually
So the pain medicine's wearing off right now?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
But it's good. It's not back when I got my wisdom my wisdom teeth pulled. They were all about dry socket, avoid dry socket, all that. Well, now they pack it with something that will dissolve, and then there's four stitches in there, and those will dissolve.
Nice.
So really, there's not a threat of dry socket. So anyway, yes, I had a molar in the back of my mouth pulled. And if you want to see a picture of it, you can talk to my family group text because they saw it.
I'm just impressed. I'm just impressed you're here. The question is, will you be here at 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon? That's the question.
From the first time I saw you this morning till now, you're looking more and more uncomfortable.
Am I looking peakish?
A little bit. Hey, I was thinking of a icebreaker when we've kind of broken the ice already. But did y'all see anything about the baseball game in Phoenix last night? The Diamondbacks and the Dodgers.
Heard about it. The bees.
The bee delay, the honeybee, 2-hour bee delay, and they brought out a beekeeper, and that guy, he smoked the bees, right? He did the smoke thing to calm them down, and then he shop vacced this whole swarm. I was like, so I followed this beekeeper on Facebook, and
of course you do.
Of course I do. I have a diverse
weird obsessions.
I have a diverse set of interests. Okay. But she handles these bees with her bare hands with no protective gear. I mean, she's just scooping them in, and she shakes them off into this box, and she'll find the queen and put it in this clip and and then the bees will just follow the queen into the box. Well, this guy had a 3-gallon Stanley shop vac. He's just sucking these bees off of this net. Off this net. They had swarmed onto the net behind home plate.
Oh, the backdrop.
Yeah, the backstop.
Wow.
It was at the very top, so he had to get on a scissor lift 30, 40 feet up in the air.
And this is during the middle of the game or something?
Well, yeah, I don't know if they had they started the game already?
I don't know. There were people in the stands.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It had to have been, because then they brought him out and he threw the ceremonial first pitch.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. That was nuts. I saw that on ironically not the bee.com. My only source of news.
Not
the only source of news is not the bee.
The only way to get Toby to a baseball game is there's got to be a swarm of bees.
Got to be a swarm of bees
with a beekeeper.
No, I love baseball. If anybody wants to take me to a baseball game, I'm game. I'm game. We'll give my phone number at the end of the podcast. But anyway, all right, good. Well, we've got a bit of a dilemma today in that
a mess.
It's a mess. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's my week to choose, and I picked a topic that we couldn't get through in a month, really. And it's the difference between Christianity and the cults, and each one of them. Not all of them are cults, but just different belief systems. Even each one of them could be a whole topic. So I bit off more than we could chew collectively. So I'm hunting just a bit, and we're going to talk about a thing called a concept, I guess, called theological triage, and it is determining really what are essential doctrines of the faith, what are second and third level doctrines, and how does that affect how we cooperate and maybe even partner with people who believe differently than we do on various issues. One of the ones that has come up, it's in our list of podcast topics, is should we cooperate with Roman Catholics and Mormons? I think those were the two on the list. Cooperate with Catholics and Mormons in the pro-life efforts. So, just to talk right off the top, I mean, we're talking about theological triage, and this brings up the question: what are the essentials of our belief? I mean, there are a few of them, and I don't even know how to host this podcast anymore. I've got myself all wound around the.
I'll jump in.
Hey, Chris,
I'll jump in because I think we've answered this question, and I think it's our statement of faith as a church, because we have obviously spent a lot of years and time thinking about these issues of essential cardinal doctrines for the sake of membership, and then what are some of those secondary doctrines that are very important to us, but we wouldn't we wouldn't deny membership over them.
Right.
And so our effort as elders to that end is two documents. One's a statement of faith. That's one page. There's 9 statements on there. The others are now, 2 or 3 year old 14-page doctrinal statement.
Yeah.
That doesn't obviously contradict the statement of faith, but goes deeper and wider and more precise on various areas. So, I think if we were to say what are the cardinal doctrines, what would we recognize as evangelical Protestant Christianity, right? It would be those issues on our statement of faith. Starts with God, triune God, creator of all things, our view of the Bible, our view of man, our view of man created by God, fallen into sin, our view of Christ, person and work, our view of salvation, how does it come about, And then toward the end of that statement, we touch on the Great Commission. We touch on
Second coming.
It's in there on the section on Christ. And then the very end is the statement about either eternal glory or eternal damnation in the eternal state. Right. So
I think there's a statement on like true unity, right? There's a statement there on the true unity of everyone who is truly in Christ.
Right.
There's a universal church, right?
Exactly.
And like you said before, there are varying beliefs in the second and third order that don't say that, if you believe this, then you're not really a Christian.
Right. Right. And so we would say that there are areas of our salvation doctrine that don't make it into our statement of faith, our eschatology, mode of baptism, timing of baptism. Those things don't make it into our statement of faith. Yeah. But of course, as a church, we've come behind that in our bylaws, and we've now said you must be a baptized believer, immersed believer, to be a member of our church. So we've kind of clarified that, although it's still not in the statement of faith per se.
Right.
Yeah. So you could say that there are certain what you might call secondary issues that wouldn't divide true believers, and namely our view of baptism. Where we do require believers' baptism to become a member of our church, and after serious debate and consideration of that issue, we as elders decided that was an important thing that we needed to land on as a church. But that wouldn't separate us, as fellow believers with, say, a Presbyterian church that held to all the other core doctrines that would be in our statement of faith,
right?
Where we'd be unified.
Nor would we say that if a person's in our church, because we grandfathered our current membership, and so we've got some current members who haven't been immersed, and that doesn't mean that we are willing to say they're not believers, obviously. Right. And so it's not a salvific issue. And so what we've tried to argue about our statement of faith, once we present it in our classes and we've gone through it in detail, we step back and say, really, there's a sense here that this is the gospel.
Right.
And so it is the gospel that creates the church. It's the gospel that creates a Christian. It's the gospel that we unite in. And so this is the core, the core issue of cardinal, primary, green light doctrines.
And another way to put it too is you could say, if somebody denied any of these statements in our doctrinal, in our statement of faith, the short statement of faith, that if somebody denied that would put a question mark on the genuineness of their Christian profession.
Right.
And so, you're talking about what are the minimal things that a person must believe in order to become a Christian. But then I think you could also, put that question, what are the things that you can't deny once you have been discipled as a believer and have come to some basic knowledge of the Christian faith?
Yeah. So the question then is, what are the things that we're willing to count as, even if they're primary, secondary, or tertiary, but still partner or cooperate with somebody who believes something completely different, but they are fighting for something that is right, a righteousness, a moral righteousness. They're fighting for, like the topic, pro-life.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to make a distinction when we're talking about this theological triage, because, Toby, you brought this into a discussion that is a little bit different than the way I have typically thought about it. When I think of theological triage, I think of doctrinal beliefs, and so far that's what we've been talking about. But I think you're adding another dimension to this discussion that I think is important, and it has to do more with almost a moral kind of foundation triage, if I don't know what the right ethics,
yeah.
And so you may have religious groups or even non-religious groups that have a certain moral framework, or ethical framework that we would be much in agreement with. And of course, we would argue that that ethical framework really finds its source in the triune God of the universe, right? But nonetheless, God has written his law upon the hearts of all human beings. And so you don't need to be a believer to know that it's wrong to murder, to steal, and to lie. Right. And so even though we live in a world where people promote all those immoral things, we also live in a world where there are unbelievers that understand that, I need to respect, life, for example. And so we can be fully supportive of that, I believe. And even though you would have those people that would probably not believe maybe any of our core doctrines, when we're talking about that theological triage. So it's a little bit different dimension, I think, that adds to this discussion.
Right. And I think you probably have people in our church, or maybe not our church, but I'd say an evangelical church who might go as far to say, how dare we partner with that group? Let's say it's a cult or false religion, whatever we'd call it. We can't partner with them. Like we're unequally yoking ourselves with them, right? And that's where I think the question is. That's the dilemma of the topic. Is it okay? Is it biblical? Is it whatever for us to partner with someone who is fighting for the same cause, but we completely disagree with what they believe, if you will, Because I think there are probably some Christians who would say, "Oh yeah, I would never partner with them for this cause, abortion." Let's say, right, pro-life.
Well, what does that mean to partner with them? I mean, here we are as a church, and we support the Pregnancy Resource Center, but does it matter who else supports them? To us, I mean, is it even our issue? It's really their issue, isn't it? To me, it's their issue as to whether they will partner with Catholics or Mormons. It's not our issue because we're supporting them, but does that mean that we're partnering with everybody else that supports them? I don't think so. I mean, total unbelievers could support them.
Yeah, defining the word. So
partnership, defining that, and what does that mean? And then who has the onus in the application of 2 Corinthians 6, do not be bound together with unbelievers. For what partnership have righteousness and lawlessness, etc. So who has the onus of applying that to their situation? So like for us, I'm thinking, okay, we can, if they have the gospel right, if they're spreading the gospel through their ministry, if they understand, if they believe the whole Bible as we do, if they've checked the boxes that we require to support a mission organization, we have a process for all that, right? We vet everything. So if they check all those boxes and we say, okay, we're going to give you X amount of money per month and we're going to pray for you and we're going to send volunteers to you, does it matter to us if the Mormon Church is doing the same thing? I don't know that that's our issue.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's their issue.
Right, which is the third party, which the third party is the Pregnancy Resource Center as our example.
Yeah.
Let's say it's the Catholic Church or the Mormon Church, and they're doing a fundraiser to raise money. They're doing a dinner banquet, right, to raise money. That's
one of those two churches is actually doing it.
Yeah, they're doing it to raise money to fight abortion, and it's 100% of the proceeds is going to go to pro-life. Would we go on that campus and support that?
Would we, as Kerrville Bible Church, publicly, or could our members go individually?
Yeah.
Thankfully, we haven't faced that because it's the Pregnancy Resource Center themselves that does their own banquet. Right. Here's practically what happens. They do a banquet and they invite from all of these groups.
Yeah, everybody.
And we've all been to these banquets. And we're in this banquet with 100, 200 people, and we look around the room and we know that there are Catholics in there, there are unbelievers in there, there are believers in there, and there's people from other believing churches in town and people from our church. It's just a high. Yeah. And again, that's one of those, not my issue. Not my issue.
That's the third party. It's
who they invite. So you're saying, no, the banquet itself is being hosted at Notre Dame, or it's being hosted at the Mormon Church right down the road from my house. Walk by it every day. Would we go there?
100% of the proceeds are pay
our money, sit down. Would we Would I do so? I'll answer two ways. Would I do that as an individual Christian? No. Would I be in support of our church advertising and announcing it from our pulpit, asking our people to go? No.
Yeah, and I think
that's partnership to me.
Yeah,
and I would
now you've crossed a line of what you would define as partnership.
And I would agree with you, Chris, on that point because there's just a great risk in that guilty by association matter. And so it's not that we would say, oh, well, it's wrong to take funds, if the Pregnancy Resource Center is receiving funds from Roman Catholics or Mormons, when one of the goals of the Pregnancy Resource Center is to save life, right? To save babies.
That's their mission.
And so if somebody's going to come alongside and help them save babies, I don't care who you are. If you are in support of saving babies, then wonderful. Give us money.
Right.
But where it gets tricky then is they also not only want to save babies, but they do want to have open doors for the gospel. Right. To these women that come into the Pregnancy Resource Center. Right. And so, once again, Chris, like you said before, the onus then is on the Roman Catholics and the Mormons. Do they realize that that's part of their goal as well? Right. Is to present, have open doors to be able to present the gospel to these people.
Right. And the onus is on those organizations to say, you can give us your money, but not with strings attached.
Yeah.
We'll take your money, but we're not taking your doctrine. Yeah. We'll take your money, but we're not taking your gospel. And once again, that burden and that onus is on that, to me, that individual organization. Mm-hmm. In your scenario, I would say, no, we're not going to do that. We'll do our own banquet.
Yeah.
We want to support it, and we'll do our own fundraiser, and we'll do our own banquet because it becomes confusing. It becomes confusing, I think, to say what are the distinctions here when we're starting to publicly associate in these joint ventures,
which can become a partnership. Right?
Which
it looks like,
at the very
least, it starts to look like a partnership. Yes.
I'll give you a good example of something that happens in this town every year. It's the Christmas walk among the churches downtown, and so. They invite various pastors, various denominations to go on this walk, and it's generally it's going to be the mainline Presbyterian Church downtown, maybe Assemblies of God, Nazarene Church, maybe First Baptist gets involved with it. It's all these churches that are relatively close, and they basically go from church to church and have a little mini service. And the Catholic Church is often or almost always part of that group. And it's 3 or 4 every time, and I've looked at that from a distance. I've had no desire to go be part of it. I've had no desire to participate in it because as soon as you put the Catholic Church in it, I'm out.
Yeah,
it just crossed the line that is not the gospel that I hold to.
Yeah. So the question, so definitely, I think the 4 of us or the 3 of us agree with you. So what about our listener? Who is asking, is that okay to do? That's what they're asking. They're saying, okay, yeah, that's for you, Chris. You're saying you absolutely wouldn't do it. Is it okay for me to do it, or are you making a blanket? It's a
okay to go. Conscience. You mean just go and observe?
And be a part of that group that goes, because it wasn't. Is it just pastors that go?
No. So there's
people.
So they invite different pastors, and you end up. I think the way the thing works is, let's say the First Baptist pastor speaks at the First Presbyterian Church, and the Assembly of God pastor speaks at the Baptist
showing
Church.
The unity, showing we're all unified.
All about unity.
We're all together.
That's what this whole thing's about. Yeah. It's a whole driving force, and they use Christmas as the means to get there. Okay. And so would I say it's wrong for an individual Christian to just go and observe that? No.
Okay.
No, you could go. When we were in Russia, we went in and observed a Russian Orthodox service. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean we agreed or we were worshiping or we were just there on an educational mission. We were just learning,
Yeah.
So what is it then that would determine? Would make that determination not to go? What is it about I would say that there was a tipping point, maybe even before the Catholics got involved. Because there's a lot that we can agree on about Christmas, right? The virgin birth, the angels singing to shepherds, and the baby in the manger. Where do we get off track?
Yeah, it would depend on if they're doing these little messages at each of these churches and they're going around. There's already this kind of ecumenical spirit, and so typically that's going to mean a downplaying of doctrinal distinctives. In order to uphold some brand of unity, and so if there's a watering down of certain what I would call those core distinctives, for example, that we say are represented in our statement of faith, and those things are being compromised, then I would have a hard time suggesting anyone be a part of that. I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not going to, castigate somebody who wanted to go and attend.
You're not going to excommunicate.
Yeah.
So you're talking about watering down first order doctrines.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The things that we would hold that this is the gospel.
And I think inevitably these kinds of ecumenical unity type things, that take place, that's where they tend toward. Maybe they don't start out that way, but when you start to broaden that circle of association, with, I think, churches that maybe even in their doctrinal statements, they might have sound doctrinal statements, but in their actual practice, there is often a tendency to deny some of those things, and I think you get in a kind of a slippery slope situation there.
Yeah, no creed but Jesus.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, they hold this unity, which becomes universalism. Even they hold that above doctrinal truth, right? It becomes primary instead of just the raw truth, right?
Yeah. But we've had, it's been before I came, but there were community Thanksgiving services, right, that we've hosted here. We haven't done it since I've been here, but
I'm not aware of ever doing it.
Really? Okay. Maybe those are just rumors. Somebody trying to get one started, and they said, we used to do that here, but they didn't.
Maybe it happened once. I don't know.
We did a community Thanksgiving dinner at our church that I served at in Colorado, and but we had total control. We invited it anyway. We hoped unbelievers would come to it, but when we did that, we had people bring side dishes, and we would provide the turkeys and that kind of thing. And we always got a large attendance to that event every year. And I know, a lot of unbelievers came to that, but we used it as an opportunity to preach the gospel. And I always gave a 10, 15-minute, very gospel-focused message. Mm-hmm. And we even saw people come to our church as a result of that event that we did. But that's a different thing, I think.
Yeah, that's outreach.
Yeah, that's an outreach. So, going back to our example of the pregnancy center, we would as a church, we would have some decisions to make if the pregnancy center deviated from their gospel focus, right? If it just became, if it was no more than pro-life advocacy and
right,
that sort of thing.
That's right. If it wasn't distinctively Christian.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because all kinds of,
it's just a social, becomes just a social.
And there have been other ministries that have strayed from that we've pulled support from,
right,
for that very reason.
Right.
It became just social services, really. So.
Yeah, and this is an interesting town because we're kind of isolated a bit, and it's a very ecumenical town, and we could go into the history of why that is, but that's the history of this town is one of religious, it's a very spiritual town, tons of churches, and the general vibe of Kerrville is toward ecumenical, Unitarian, unity, all of those kind of things, and so it's incredibly frustrating personally because we're talking about things that we take for granted that most other churches don't even talk in this terms. They don't really even talk about statements of faith and doctrinal statements. They're tucked away. Nobody even knows where they are. Nobody knows what's on them. They're not living documents in these churches. And so one of my frustrations, we've got a ministerial alliance in Kerrville, and it's been here for years and years and years. And they meet once a month at a local restaurant, and people come, whoever wants to come, and they share whatever they want to share, talk about whatever they want to talk about. You can have the floor.
Your cup of tea. I mean, you can't wait for it. You have it on your calendar.
Guess how many times I've been in 24 years, and once, maybe twice. I think twice. And anybody can stand up and take the floor, and it all just becomes this. I won't use the crude word, but this little intramural competition of who's out ministering the others, and everybody stands up and reports what they're doing for the kingdom of God and what they're doing in ministry, and and they want everybody to come. I've been invited multiple times, and I know the current president. I would say he was a friend. We have nothing against him at all. If you ask the question, does this group have a statement of faith? There is no answer. It's just radio silence. It's like, how can we call ourselves a ministerial alliance? What are we allied around?
Yeah,
what is the alliance here? And so literally, that's the name of it. It's Kerrville Ministerial Alliance. Well, that's pretty broad, isn't it? I mean, hey, I'm a minister of whatever you want, So, and I've just made those efforts of how about a statement? How about a statement of faith? How about something that we can say this is our fence?
Yeah.
And if we'd do that, I'd be all in. I would come to your monthly meetings, but it's just wide open.
Yeah. So the result is we're kind of the black sheep of this ecumenical unity of the city of Kerrville.
And there's probably...
that KBC over there on the corner. They take the Bible too seriously. Heard that before.
Probably so.
You've heard that before?
Not for KBC, but...
Oh, okay.
I'll give you an interesting example of, and I'm not sure this is cooperation. I don't know how you would say this, but again, I'm going back to our church in Colorado. There was a Methodist church in the town of Mancos, a little town of 1,000 people, and they had a food bank and a lot of poor people in that region. And so I think it was, one night a week. They opened the doors of their church, and just people off the streets came in and just got food. And our church was in a very rural location. It was not a kind of place that people would just come off the streets and go to because it's like a destination. You had to go out of your way to get to our church. One of the difficulties of doing ministry there. But anyway, we wanted to help feed poor people in our region, and so what we did was we collected food. We had a once a month kind of thing where people would bring in canned goods and whatnot. I would collect those. I would take them down and give them to the Methodist Church, and they would add it to their store or whatever their food bank.
We have that here.
And that's all we did. And there was no, as far as I could tell, there was no attempt to like proselytize or evangelize the people that came and got food, but it was a way for us to just hey, there's a need in our community. Right. We're gonna help with that. I wouldn't call it cooperation. But it was obviously we had some connection there.
Yeah, it's helping. I mean, we do that as a youth ministry on Wednesday nights, We've helped entities, churches, ministries, outreaches that we wouldn't agree with doctrinally, but we're helping them with food or clothes or whatever. It's kind of similar to what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. Right. So when does help and association cross the line to partnership?
Yeah. And it's always takes some discernment.
Question, right?
This particular church, and I'll just add to the story, this particular church, a couple of years later, really started openly advocating for gay marriage and the LGBT, Q agenda and all that. And once they started doing that, I said, okay, no more. We cannot now come behind it because it was very public. Right. And now all of a sudden it felt like we're participating in something clearly anti-biblical. And so we had to stop.
Right. And we got the exact same thing here.
Yeah.
The major food bank in town is primarily supported by First Presbyterian, the church that had the first gay wedding in Kerr County history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's just the reality we're living in. I think you got to be very careful, very discerning, and how many times have you guys doing that as a youth group? Does it become partnership? Twice, 3 times? At what point has it that discerning line of we're in full support of your ministry, and here's the way we're showing it.
Yeah.
Versus versus a one-time thing, and it's really complicated. But I'd rather err on the side of protection and caution, and because these are all slippery slopes, and why can't we just do these things ourselves?
Yeah.
Why do we need to partner with these groups? Why don't we just do them ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
That's always my question.
Yeah.
Food banks and whatnot, all that stuff. I mean, I guess there's power in numbers, but anyway.
Well, I mean, at some point you got to wonder what are you about? Because we have funds. We have resources to help our church members, but at some point we got to cut that off as far as the community is concerned, because as a church we're not a social service organization, right? We're not just here to meet physical needs. I think we talked about this last week, didn't we? Or sometime
maybe on mission on preaching the gospel, but meeting human needs as well.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it becomes a thing where the church just becomes a social services outlet instead of really the gospel-centered organism.
Right.
So, all right. Well, hopefully we turn that Sal's ear into a French purse.
I was thinking clear as mud, but yeah.
And Lord willing, we will be back next week, and maybe Scott can bring something that's a little bit better to talk about.
More narrow.
It
wasn't
more
bad.
Narrow. No, it wasn't bad. It was just too much.
It was broad.
It was too much. Well, I have one more chance to host before we go on our little hiatus over the summer. Okay. So I'll do better next time.
You'll not only redeem the time, you'll redeem yourself.
I'll redeem myself. Okay.
Right. Rita's dog fell asleep on my podcast, so
yeah. Well, I think it's an old dog.
Oh,
it's the dog that.
No, it's a new dog.
Yes,
it's a young dog.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure the dog understands English.
But it was my voice, and
no.
The dog must have seen my demeanor through the microphone.
Yeah. Maybe the dog only speaks Spanish or understands Spanish. So, okay. Let me pray to close. Father in heaven, thank you for this time together. And I pray that this discussion is encouraging and maybe enlightening to our listeners. We thank you for the truth of the gospel. And I pray that we would never compromise that. And you'd give us wisdom as to how to cooperate and sometimes partner with others for these issues, and let us know where that line is as to how far is too far. And Lord, we give you all the glory and praise, for you alone are worthy. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Kerrville Bible Church Pastors Podcast. We want to be a resource for you and answer the biblical, theological, or pastoral questions that you may have. Send them to us via email at questions@kerrvillebiblechurch.org, or leave us a text or voicemail at 830-321-0349.